Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. The FantasyAthon is right around the corner. It starts April 5th and runs through April 15th. I will leave more information down below. And I wanted to do my TBR video for you guys, show you what I'm thinking about reading, but also I put up a post on my Instagram, follow me on Instagram, asking for your very specific recommendation requests. Because I read a lot of fantasy. I've been reading fantasy for years. I am 30 and I've been reading fantasy for probably about 24 years now. So first I'm going to do the TBR, and I'm going to be combining challenges because even though it's 10 days, I just don't read that many books in a month these days. I usually read like 5 or 6. So since there's 7? Yeah, there's 7 challenges. So if I were going to get all of that done in 10 days, I need to combine them. So the first, hybrid that I'm doing is read a diverse title, read a debut, and read a fantasy that you started but then never finished, like a soft DNF. And so for this one, I'm going with Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. It is diverse in that it is a female-female romance. This is her first published novel. And also, I got actually more than halfway through it, and I stopped reading it not really for any particular reason. It was moving kind of slow, but I was still interested in it, and I do actually still want to finish it. So this is definitely on here because this is a young adult, and I'm more than halfway through it. Hopefully this won't take me very long, but it will fulfill 3 categories with 1 book. So the next set of categories that I'm doing is start a new series and read a hype train fantasy. This is a book that I have been meaning to read for a really long time because I've heard a lot of people really loving it and really excited about it. It is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I've read the Illuminae series by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, their co-authored book, but I have yet to read Nevernight, and I know that the sequel to this is out. I don't know if the 3rd one is out yet. But if this goes well, then I'll have a whole new series to get into. Okay, and then these next 2, I only have 1, challenge per title. It is read a book in a format you normally don't. I don't read a lot of comics or graphic novels, so I'm going with the first issue of Captain Marvel in Pursuit of Flight by, I think it's Kelly DeConnick. It's something DeConnick. Kelly Sue DeConnick, there we go. And the movie just came out. I loved the movie. This one could also count as read a book that you started and never finished, because I don't read a ton of comics. I did start this one and then just didn't finish it, even though it's super short and a graphic novel, so it really shouldn't have taken me that long. But yeah, I just never actually finished this. So, gonna get through this because I love the movie, I love Carol Danvers, and yeah. And the last challenge for the FantasyAthon is to pamper yourself or immerse yourself in the world. So it could be something like do a book to movie adaptation or cook a recipe from a book series. And that's the one I'm going with. So I'm going to be making something, I don't know exactly what yet, out of the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook. I have bookmarked quite a few recipes that look interesting. I haven't decided if I want to do something sweet or savory yet, but I'm also thinking that I might do a vlog for FantasyAthon, and if I do, I will probably vlog the process of making whatever it is that I make out of this. I'm considering making rock cakes, which are the thing that Hagrid serves to, the trio a lot. They're basically cinnamon cookies with raisins in them. I'm thinking about making cinnamon cookies with chocolate chips in them because raisins and cookies are why I have trust issues. But anyway, we'll see how this turns out. Okay, so on my Instagram, I did get a few requests for recommendations. So if you're having some trouble putting together your TBR, this might help you out. One of those was from a good friend of mine who said, I want to read more fantasy noir / detective / con artisty / gangster / I don't know what exactly, but you know. And you know what? I do know. So if you haven't read anything in that genre of fantasy and you really don't know where to start and really want to start, I would start with White Cat by Holly Black. This is the first book in the Curse Worker trilogy. It is con artisty, it is mobstery, it's got a heist storyline, it's urban fantasy with a alternate history built into our world where because of these magic curse workers, the history of the world is different. Where basically they're born with their gift of curse working, and they have been outlawed, so they all went to work for the mafia. So even in modern day, the mafia is like very much alive and well. So it has kind of a 1920s mobster feeling, but in present day. It is so great. That is unfortunately the only like noir gangster book that I can think of off the top of my head, but if you're looking for like police procedural murder investigation, I would definitely go with Midnight Riot. This is another urban fantasy. It is the first in a series. I think there's 6 or 7 out now. And it is about a mixed race police officer in London who is just like a rookie cop living his normal life, and then he sees a ghost in the course of a murder investigation and gets like conscripted into the like supernatural investigations unit of the Metropolitan Police, which is one dude who is the last remaining wizard in England. And he takes on Peter as his apprentice. It is such a great series. I could talk about it forever. London, the city, feels like a whole separate character in this book. The author clearly loves the city so much, and it really translates onto the page. For more high fantasy mystery novel stuff, I recommend City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is, again, the first in a trilogy. It is like a mix of fantasy Russia and fantasy India, where fantasy Russia basically had all these gods that ended up dying, and so when all their infrastructure crumbled because their gods had died, fantasy India kind of moved in and took over a little bit. Obviously, they're not actually called fantasy Russia and fantasy India, but I can't remember the names of the actual, like, empires. So there is a murder mystery aspect to this, there is just a really cool world to this, and there are also some gods that were thought to be dead that might not be as dead as we thought. And then another like high fantasy murder mystery series is The Drowning City by Amanda Downham. The second book is called The Bone Palace, I believe. This one came out in like 2009, before we were having all of those conversations about diversity, and this still managed to be pretty diverse. The main character is a necromancer and a spy. She uses her necromancy basically to solve murder mysteries, where she is able to go in and see like the last images that the murdered person saw before they were killed. Hi. Hi. This one has a whole plot about revolutionaries that are trying to overthrow their like colonizing government, and the main character is basically trying to finance revolution. So the nominal main character is Iseult, who is the necromancer, but each book has like a set of point of view characters, and they all take place in different locations. So the first one takes place in a city called Cymere, which Iseult has traveled to in order to help fund this revolution that's brewing in the city. The second one takes place back in her home city, and what I was saying about the world actually being pretty diverse is in the second book, one of the point of view characters is a trans woman, which was, I think, the first time I'd found a fantasy novel that had a trans or non-binary character as a point of view character. And then the third one, I forget exactly, is like out in a desert. It also has another like non-binary character who is a point of view character. So those are some of my favorite like fantasy, noir, detective, gangster stories. Another request I got was just for queer fantasy in general. Obviously, I can't totally recommend it because I haven't finished it, but Of Fire and Stars does have a female-female romance. Hi! Hi!
Set the puppy.
Oh no.
You're barking.
Yeah. You're home early.
Yeah.
I haven't started cooking. Because I'm recording a video.
Oh, it's okay. I might need to snip it up.
Okay.
Oh, hi, gorgeous.
Hi.
Hi. Should I stay out of your hair?
Do you want to come say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
Kiwi.
Hi. Oh, you got lipstick on your face.
Okay, I'll let you keep doing your video.
Okay. You know I was recording that entire time, right?
Who are you?
Yeah.
No, I guess I assumed you would have cut it.
I mean, I can. Go wipe your face off. We'll talk about it later. Another one of my favorite queer fantasy books is The House of Shattered Wings by Aliette de Bedard. This is a, like, French magical post-apocalyptic novel where basically there were always these magical beings on Earth that were, like, minor deities and immortals and that kind of thing, and then angels started to fall from the sky, and they ruined everything because imperialism metaphor. The book takes place in war-torn Paris, which is basically slowly crumbling and dying. The angels have arranged themselves into houses that are like plotting against each other and working to protect newly fallen angels from like magical poachers, essentially, because they are made of magic. Their entire body is magic, and when they fall, they're very vulnerable, so people will try to carve them up and take their body parts for use in magic stuff. Yeah, kind of gruesome. This is just such a great book. It's got queer angels, it's got Vietnamese dragons, it's got a immortal Vietnamese witch, and he's been wandering Paris hoping to get back home to Vietnam for like centuries. I recently finished the second book in this series, and I'm really looking forward to the third now. I have another couple almost classic queer fantasy, if such a thing exists. The first is Swords Point by Ellen Kushner. I think this was originally published in the 80s. There are now a few sequels and a prequel series that I read the first volume of, called Tremontaine. What I love about this world is that it's incredibly bi-normative. People have lovers of multiple genders, and no one really bats an eye about it. The main character of Swords Point is Richard St. Vier, who is known as the best swordsman of his generation. Swordsmen in this world basically work to settle duels of honor between noblemen, so instead of the noblemen killing each other, they just hire other people to do it. This book is fantasy in that it takes place in a world that is not ours, but it doesn't really have any magic. There is discussion in one of the sequels about how there used to be magic and now it's sort of faded away, but this is really just more of a intrigue and plotting and queer romance story, and it's so great. So the main romance in this one is two men, but in both the prequel Tremontaine series and in one of the later sequels, there are female-female romances. It's just very bi-normative, very queer, and I really love this series. It makes me feel a lot of things. Another sort of classic of the queer fantasy genre is Luck in the Shadows. This is book one of the Night Runner series by Lynn Flewelling. This also sort of fits with the previous request for, investigation stuff. It's not really police, but the main characters are spies, so it does have that going for it. And again, this is a pretty bi-normative world, and just a very queer-friendly world. There are, I think, 6 or 7 books in this series, and there are a couple in the middle that get a little weird, but overall, I really like the series. She took a break in between writing them, book 3 and book 4 for over a decade, because again, I think the first one was published in 1996, and the last one was published 2 years ago. There's also a prequel trilogy to this series where the main character I would personally describe as non-binary. Some people might call her trans. Some people might call her a cis woman who is in the wrong body for magical reasons for most of her life. It's a little confusing, but essentially she was hidden as a boy magically in order to escape being murdered. And so there is a lot of exploration of gender in that one. Also, if you've just read the Night Runner series, I definitely recommend checking out that trilogy because it's a little different. The first one is very, very creepy and scary in a way that these really aren't. These are just more of a fun caper. So it's kind of a different writing style for Lynn Flewelling, and I think it works really well for that series. Another one that I read recently that was queer, had a female-female romance, is Girls of Paper and Fire. This is about a girl who gets chosen to be part of the king's harem. She is a human girl, but the king is a mix of human and animal. I think he's called a demon. I do want to warn for sexual violence in the book, but there is also a really great romance between her and one of the other girls in the harem. And I do actually have more to say about the way that the sexual violence is handled, but that might need to wait for another video. Some other queer books that I have mentioned before, and you may have even heard about already are The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. There are a couple queer characters in this, and there's a queer romance by the end of it, although I won't go too much into that for spoiler reasons. And also In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. The main character is my favorite grouchy bisexual. His name is Elliot, and he basically discovers that he is one of, like, the chosen children to go through a portal into a fantasy magical land, and he is very genre savvy. This is kind of a send-up of the, like, portal fantasy, but it's done so lovingly, and Sarah Rees Brennan is just absolutely one of my favorite authors. And again, Elliot is extremely bisexual and extremely grouchy about everything. He makes two best friends when he gets there, who are the elf Serene, who he convinces himself that he is in love with immediately, and Serene makes friends with Luke Sunborn, therefore Elliot ends up sort of begrudgingly being friends with Luke Sunborn. Luke Sunborn being the, like, blonde-haired, blue-eyed hero of the story type character that Elliot just, like, hates immediately on principle, because he is used to getting beat up by those kinds of characters. This book is so delightful, very queer, very funny, very emotional. Everyone should read it. And it is also a standalone, so if you are looking to get into a book that is not going to be 12 books long and take up your entire life, then this is probably a good one to start with. So that is going to be everything for both my TBR for the FantasyAthon and some recommendations if you're looking for fantasy to put on your TBR, either for the FantasyAthon or just in general. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you're participating in the FantasyAthon. Tell me if you've made a TBR post, or let me know what your TBR is going to be down in the comments. And I will see you guys soon with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!